In the previous video, we covered statistics that test differences. In this video, we will talk about statistics that compare risk. Risk is the probability that an event will happen. For example, one boy is born in every 2 births. So, the risk of giving birth to a boy is 1/2. Risk ratio, also called relative risk, is the risk in the treated or exposed group divided by the risk in the control group. For example, risk of a smoker getting COPD is 5%. Risk of non-smoker is 0.5%. Risk ratio of a smoker getting COPD is the ratio between these two risks. Therefore, risk ratio in this case equals 10. Risk ratio is often used in cohort studies. As a clinician, it is important to correctly interpret the results of risk ratio. For example, COVID-19 infection was associated with an increased risk of myocarditis. This is the risk ratio. This is 95% confidence interval. The confidence interval does not overlap with 1, indicating the risk ratio is significant. This is COVID-19 vaccine. It was also associated with an increased risk of myocarditis. These are the data that compare adverse events associated with COVID-19 infection and the vaccine. The blue lines represent the vaccine, and the yellow lines represent COVID infection. Here we ask a question: how many adverse events are significant? You can pause the video to see whether you can figure this out. To answer this question, we first need to know 2 concepts. First, an adverse event means risk ratio above 1. Second, a significant event means confidence interval does not overlap with 1. With these, let's look at vaccine versus COVID-19 infection. For the vaccine, we have 1, 2, 3. For COVID-19 infection, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Therefore, more adverse events are associated with COVID-19 infection than the vaccine. Here is a study on association between sunbeds and melanoma. This is a case control study. Here are the results. The first column shows the risk factor. On the second column, cases represent people who have melanoma. On the third column, controls represent people who do not have melanoma. The first row represents exposed group. The second row represents the non-exposed group. Odds is the number of times an event happens divided by the number of times it does not happen. In this case, in the exposed group, the odds equals number of cases divided by number of control. As a result, odds equals 67 divided by 41. By the same token, in the non-exposed group, odds equals number of cases, 210 divided by control, 242. Odds ratio is the odds of having been exposed to a risk factor divided by odds of the control group. In this case, the odds ratio is the ratio between these two. So it equals 67 divided by using a calculator, I already got the number. This is 1.88. It means the odds of a person exposed to sunbat in getting melanoma is 1.88 times that of a control. This is a cohort study. 100 women with vagina candida were given an antifungal, and the other 100 were given a placebo. They were reviewed 3 days later. Here are the results. The risk of the treatment in having the disease is 30 over 100. So the risk in this group is 30 divided by 100. In the control group, the risk is 40 divided by 100. Absolute risk reduction is the difference between these two. So it is equals to risk in the control group is 40% minus 30%. Absolute risk reduction is 10%. A closely related term called attributable risk has a very similar calculation. Number needed to treat, NNT, is the number of patients who needed to be treated for one to get benefit. This equals 1 over ARR. So in this case, it's 1 divided by 10%. So number needed to treat is 10. Relative risk reduction is ARR divided by the risk of control group, which is represented here. This can be written as risk C, risk T divided by risk C. So this equals risk T, risk C. And this part is relative risk. So relative risk reduction can be written as 1 minus RR. We can use a histogram to represent these results. Here, this is control group, and this is treatment group. Relative risk is the ratio between these two. 30% divided by 40% and that's equal to 75%. ARR is the difference between these two. 40% minus 30% equals 10%. RRR is 1 minus RR, 25%. In a low-risk group, the risks change. In this case, in the control group, the risk is 10%. The treatment group is 7.5%. The relative risk is the ratio between these two, 7.5 divided by 10%, and this is still 75%. As a result, the RRR is 1 minus RR, it's also the same, 25%. But ARR is different. This equals 10% minus 7.5%, and this equals 2.5%. Therefore, ARR is sensitive to the baseline change, while relative risk and relative risk reduction are not. Absolute risk reduction is often used in randomized trials and cohort studies, while odds ratio is often used in case control studies.